What's up everybody, Soul here with another Sword of Convallaria video, and today we're going to be taking a look at a trinket tier list which I have put together. We're going to go individually, one by one, covering each of the trinkets that are in the game right now, how they can impact your gameplay and or serve your story, and yes, I will be ultimately placing them on a tier list. 3 things are taken into consideration with each one, which is accessibility, viability, and utility. With that said, those 3 metrics are taken into consideration for each individual item, and then ultimately I will place that item on the tier list, which is a pure reflection of my opinion. Make sure you drop down in the comments and let me know if you agree, disagree, or you just want to tell me something unique or something that maybe that I missed about said trinkets. Without any further ado, let's get right into it. First up, we're going to take a look at Berserk Incense. And so this is a trinket that gives you the support ability gains Berserk Awake. The effect is your movement is increased by 1 tile and your damage is increased by 10% for 2 turns. It can be used up to 1 time per battle. Of course, that's at 1 star. At 2 star, that's going to be increased to 15% damage boost, and then everything else stays the same. 3 stars, it can be utilized 2 times per battle instead of 1 with a 5-turn cooldown. And then at 4 stars, your damage boost is increased to 20%. And then at 5 stars, your damage boost is 20% still, but your cooldown is now reduced to 3 turns. This is a unique, interesting trinket that ultimately I feel like is not very useful. To take a whole turn to utilize a trinket for a damage boost when we can get that in other ways so easily, especially today. This is a trinket that was a part of the original conception of the game and honestly wasn't useful then and has only fallen further behind since. In my opinion, this trinket desperately needs a rework and or a buff in order to have any utility or purpose in the game, and I really hope the devs are listening here. Please buff and or rework this item so that you're not just wasting digital assets. Let it serve a purpose, give it new life, and rework this item. Anyways, with that said, I place the Berserk Incense as a tier 5 trinket. Up next, we're going to take a look at the Blood Luxite Amulet. Of course, this is Tristan's signature trinket. It increases your magical damage by 4% and your magical AoE damage by 8%. When dying, the effect changes, so it increases your magic damage by 6% and magical AoE damage by 12%. At 2 stars, you get a boost in that damage base. It's 6% in boost and then 12% boost, and then when dying, 9 and 18% respectively. And then at 3 stars, you don't see any difference in the base stats of the amulet. However, when dying, the magical damage increase is boosted to 12% from 9, and then the AoE damage is boosted to 24 from 18%. And then at 4 stars, we see that base damage increased again to 8% from 6 and 16 from 12. And then when dying, you also see a boost to 16% from 12 and 32% from 24. And then lastly, at 5 stars, we see it in its final form, where it increases magical damage by 10%, magical AoE damage by 20%, and then when dying, those effects are once again doubled. So your magical damage is increased by 20%, and your magical AoE damage is increased by 40%. This is a fantastic trinket that really serves a great purpose in a unique way. Unfortunately, it is requiring you to be dying in order to get the most out of this trinket. And on most characters, when you're in a dying state, you lose quite a bit of damage on your attack and so on because you're in that injured/dying state. And so this really doesn't fill everyone's role the best. It definitely is made for Tristan and serves her very well. Other characters definitely get some utility out of it, but it can arguably be second or almost replaced by some other items we'll get to later. So for that reason, I place this trinket as a tier 0.5. Next is the Breath-Concealing Ring. This increases your physical attack by 1% before an active attack. Basic attack increases physical attack by additional 9% until the start of the next turn. So that's really interesting. It's definitely unique, and if you can imagine, this is Nydia's unique signature trinket. You see at 2 stars, it increases again. Your physical attack is 2%. Before the active attack, of course, that damage still stays the same at 9%. At 3 stars, we see an increase in that physical attack of 3%. Before the active basic attack, now your physical attack is increased to 12% instead of 9%. And then at 4 stars, we see that basic attack, that physical attack increased by 4%. And then at 5 stars, you increase your physical attack by 5% now. And before an active basic attack, it increases your physical attack by an additional 15% until the start of the next turn. This ring definitely serves Nydia's purpose. Place down Kit in the way she hits enemies with her basic attacks continuously and getting those secondary effects. This ring is absolutely made for her in every way possible, and really no other character currently gets the same use out of it that she does. You could argue that other characters can benefit from it, say Vial and so on and so forth. However, those basic attacks is a big limiting factor. A lot of characters don't want to use their basic attacks every single turn like Nydia does. Vial is really kind of an exception, and then outside of that, you're not really finding too many. And even then, you're not really wanting to use basic attack on Vial all the time if you're set them up for alert. So this ring is phenomenal, and it really does a great thing for its character. But outside of its character, it's niche, and it doesn't really have the best purpose. It's also expensive, hard to attain, and not easy to star level. And for that reason, I would rank this trinket a tier 2. Moving along, up next we have the Rejection Mask. It increases your attack and defense by 2% while protected by a magical shield equal to 30% of max HP. The equipped character additionally gains 3% attack and defense. And so this trinket is Estra's unique signature trinket. It is interesting and definitely niche in that it requires a magical shield in order to be procced. However, it increases at 2 stars to 4% instead of that 2%, and then everything else remains the same. And then at 3 stars, we see it increase in that additionally gained attack and defense of 6%, up to 6% for each layer of shielding on there, each 30% of max HP covered. So you're now getting 2 stacks of that. And then at 4 stars, your attack and defense is increased to 6% from that 4%. So you're getting a big boost there. And then of course with the magical shield, it is further enhanced again, but no boost there in that star level. And then at 5 stars, your attack and defense is increased to 6% still. However, you're now getting that additional effect of your attack and defense boost from 3% up to 9%. So now you can have all 3 stacks for each 30% of your HP that is shielded. So this is a little bit niche in some ways. That flat attack and defense of 6% is very decent, but this signature trinket also is not easy to attain and is difficult. You're spending those cornucopia passes for opportunities to get them and this, that, and the third. It's not the best. It's not the best at all. You, of course, honestly are really for a running, and it's not going to be easy to get this trinket. And for that reason, I honestly feel like this trinket serves Estra phenomenally. It's incredibly good on Estra. There's no two ways about it. But outside of Estra, it is niche, it is hit or miss, and it is expensive to try to get and utilize. And so I place this trinket tier 2. Up next is an epic piece of equipment, Coexist Armor. Damage taken is decreased by 5% when healthy. At 2 stars, that's increased to 6% when healthy. 3 stars, 7%. 4 stars, 8%. And 5 stars, 10% when healthy. This is an item that I used the snot out of initially when I started playing the game. It's accessible, it's easy to get, and for quite a while, you're going to utilize this, especially when you're doing those, clearing those weapon trials for the first time and trying to survive them and this, that, and the third. What an amazing piece of equipment. Unfortunately, past the early part of the game, mid part of the game, when you get comfortable in your account and you start to really progress through in-game, this trinket still can serve a purpose, but is less useful. And so, for me, this trinket is phenomenal, but falls off a little bit at later points, which is not uncommon for epic trinkets at all. And so, it's still very strong, still very good, but I place it tier 2 on the tier list. Up next is Cooling Powder. Cooling Powder, at 1 star, you gain an immunity to no healing received. This is an amazing trinket. Absolutely love it. I can't tell you how many times I've pivoted to this trinket and utilized it just because there's so many different ways for the game to take away your healing abilities, and this keeps you immune from that. Some characters heavily rely on their ability to be able to heal, Pamina for one, and so I have this trinket hard slotted on her. This is something I don't ever want to see away from her, and is just a great trinket overall. It gets better at 2 stars because now you're increasing the healing received by 4%. At 3 stars, you're increasing the healing received by 8%. At 4 stars, you're increasing the healing received by 12%. And then at 5 stars, you're increasing the healing received by 16%. This is a no-brainer tank item. This serves a great purpose for a lot of characters that absolutely, like I said, need to heal no matter what. And yes, it is a phenomenal trinket. It's not amazing on everyone though. I think it's better on healing. For healing those tank units that absolutely have to have it. Outside of that, it's kind of hit or miss. It might be something you use for the coverage and the immunity, but you're not really too concerned about it. This is specifically for those characters that really need to stay out of trouble and make sure they're getting those heals and or tanking. And for that reason, I would rank it tier 0.5. Up next is Crystal Burst Armor. And so at 1 star, this increases your HP by 2% and your strike backs deal 10% more damage. I absolutely love this item. This is one of the first legendary trinkets I got. I utilize it in quite a few ways. I definitely try to make the most of these strike backs and put them on characters that can definitely get the most out of this trinket. However, the strike back aspect of this trinket ends up becoming kind of secondary as you progress through the game and get further. And once you're at in-game, so to speak, you're far less concerned about strike backs, and you're absolutely loving the HP that this trinket provides, as it is fairly unique. And so at 2 stars, that HP provided is increased to 4% from 2. And then at 3 stars, you're now getting an increased HP of 6%, and your strike backs deal 15% more damage. At 4 stars, your HP is increased by 8%, and your strike backs now deal 20% more damage. And then at 5 stars, your HP is increased by 10%, and your strike backs now deal 25% more damage. This trinket is, a lot of times the best in slot for, say, Agatha and so on. A lot of characters really like this. I've seen people running on Coco just for that HP boost and so on. Play the game your way and do what you want. But a lot of people love the HP that this trinket gives you, and the strike back is not too shabby either. This is a phenomenal trinket that really does a great job, and for that reason, I would place it a tier 1 trinket. The Disaster Bottle is next, and so this is an epic trinket where it is a debuff instant, where it inflicts 1 random level 2 attribute debuff on the enemy for 2 turns, and can be used 2 times per battle with a 4-turn cooldown. There's nothing wrong with this trinket, especially early game or through those weapon trials or those boss stages and so on and so forth. You almost always want somebody to have this on, just so that you can make sure those enemies are debuffed, nerfed, and they're dealing less damage, taking more damage, yada yada yada. Debuffing is amazing, and this trinket gives you a way to do so basically for free. It's instant, it doesn't cost energy, it has great range. This is a phenomenal trinket. It gets better at 2 stars, where you're now utilizing it every 3 turns because that cooldown is reduced. And then at 3 stars, you're now inflicting 2 random level 2 attribute debuffs. And then you still have everything the same. And then at 4 stars, you now see that cooldown reduced to 2 turns. And then at 5 stars, you now see that cooldown is still 2 turns, but you're able to use it 3 times per battle. And so this is a phenomenal trinket. As I have said, you want to debuff, especially in those boss fights where you're fighting one enemy and you're trying to kill them, and you want to make sure they're suppressed, debuffed, nerfed, whatever you want to call it, as best as possible. And this gives you a phenomenal way to do it. It's also very inexpensive and accessible. You'll come through a million of these things, so getting at 5 stars, not an issue. This will be one of the trinkets that you're going to utilize often early on in your gameplay, mid-level gameplay, and then of course in-game it still serves a fantastic purpose and really doesn't fall off. You still want to use it. And so for that reason, I would rank it tier 0 on the tier list. Up next is another epic trinket, one that I personally love and is one of my favorites, the Evergreen Pendant. When healed, there is a 50% chance to gain 1 random level 2 attribute debuff, which lasts for 2 turns. So that's a pretty phenomenal effect. It's unfortunate at 1 star, it's only a 50% chance, but that level 2 attribute buff is phenomenal. And for each heal, so that's anytime the character is healed from any resource. So that is absolutely massive. You cannot refute that. And we're talking about lifesteal, we're talking about auto effects like, you know, Rawia is a great example of that. She gets tipsy, she takes a drink when she gets hit, boom, she's getting a buff for it. She uses her instant cast where she drinks, boom, she's getting a buff for it. You know, Evergreen Pendant definitely helps her out in a tremendous way. Dandelion, his trait, when anything dies on the battlefield, he instantly gets a heal, and this will instantly add a buff to that, or at 1 star a 50% chance, because it gets better and better as its star levels up. So let's talk about that. At 2 stars, when healed, there's a 60% chance to apply that attribute buff. At 3 stars, 70%, 4 stars, 80%, and at 5 stars is no longer a chance, it is guaranteed. You will get that attribute buff for each heal received, and that is where it pops off, and it's absolutely worth slotting. Before 5 stars, it's hit or miss. It's not a great trinket, as good, I should say, until it gets to 5 stars. But this is an epic trinket that you're going to be swimming in, and you will have tons of these things. And so it is easy to 5 stars. It's very accessible. And in my opinion, on those particular characters that come through and utilize a lot of heals, it is very viable. It is absolutely great. When you're buffing your characters, it's a free 20% or more boost to your attack, defense, you name it. Can't hate on that. You absolutely love it. And so for that reason, I would rank this trinket tier 1. Fancy Hat is next, and so this gains an immunity to disrupt, and then when healthy, your magic defense is increased by 3%. That immunity to disrupt is massive. You absolutely want your characters to be able to keep casting, not be silenced, you name it. And this is going to keep you in the game, in action, and not allow those debuffs to affect your units. For some units like a Akambe, it even gets them out of their own negative effects that are picked up from their own abilities and or effects. And so you absolutely get a lot of utility out of this trinket, and it only gets better with star level, as at 2 stars you're now getting that magic defense of 6%. 3 stars, it now goes up to magic defense increases by 9%. 4 stars, your magic defense increases by 12%, and at 5 stars your magic defense is increased by 15% when healthy. And so, like I said, you're using this on your mages and so on and so forth. They're backline units. You don't want them taking tons of damage anyways. They're fairly squishy, and so keeping them healthy is ideal. So now they're getting a nice little boost in that magic defense, ensuring that they can survive the hits and so on and so forth. This is phenomenal for, say, like your healers and such. And then that immunity to disrupt is king. And it's absolutely useful. No two ways about it. There's so many situations and times when it is absolutely pivotal in the game. And yeah, what a great trinket. I would rank it tier 1 on the tier list. Flying Blade Armguard is next, and this effect has piercing damage. It is an instant. It deals piercing damage equal to 12% of HP to the enemy and can be used 2 times per battle with a cooldown of 3 turns. So this is a phenomenal trinket that really does a lot of really good things in that way. It is an instant cast 2 times per battle with a 3-turn cooldown. Can't beat that. And yeah, it also is really, really good for characters like OG Sophia and Auguste when you're wanting to create that extra effect or proc their traits and get extra effects from that. And so this item definitely serves that utility very, very well. Initially, this was your go-to best in slot item for any of your damage dealers. And initially, I mean like the original conception of the game. This is what you'd find everybody trying to put on their damage dealers because it just allowed them to do more damage. Now things have changed. This is no longer the go-to best in slot item for all of your damage dealing characters. And now it really kind of just serves a purpose for those niche characters and who gets the benefit of that extra effect or that bonus small attack. And so this is still a fantastic trinket, but it doesn't serve the purpose that it once did. I'd honestly argue that in its time, it was one of the best trinkets, but it also is very hard to get. It's not easy to come across these. Some accounts are lucky, don't get me wrong, but I've been playing for quite a while now, and I'm only just now at the point where I can 5-star one of these. And so, and I've been playing since day 1 launch, so bear that in mind. These things are not incredibly accessible. They're not easy to come by. It's not going to be often when you clear your trial and you see one of these. And really, most of these that I've gotten has come from clearing Clash and from those rewards. And so I think there's slightly different pool chances on that, and that's where this comes in. Anyways, I digress. This is a fantastic trinket, specifically on certain characters who need that special effect or extra ways to proc it. Outside of that, it's not the best and it's hard to get. So I would rank it tier 0.5. Up next is Hunter's Intuition. When alert is triggered, it deals 5% more damage. Moreover, if a foe uses a skill within range of alert, it will also be triggered. So this is obviously a trinket that is specifically made for those alert units. We love that we get a nice free damage boost on those alert abilities. Can't say enough about that. That's absolutely phenomenal. And then that extra effect where they're coming in and they might take damage from walking into the area effect or the range. They're not going to take extra damage for any further movements they take unless they stop, take an action, and then move again. With that said, this is now going to punish them for taking an action. Absolutely phenomenal. So when a unit walks into your range of, let's say, your Momo, she's going to hit them. If they survive and they go to cast their ability and or activate their attack, Momo's going to hit them again before they get to do it and hopefully kill them. And so this is phenomenal for that reason. It gives you an extra way to trigger that alert ability. At 2 stars, we see that damage increase to 10%. 3 stars, it increases to 15%. 4 stars, it increases to 20%. And at 5 stars, it is increased to 25%. 25% damage boost is pretty massive, especially when it's just for free and it's just there and you're using the alert skills anyways. And so this is an insanely powerful item for alert units, and for that reason I'm going to rank it tier 0.5. Up next is the Luxite Greatshield. And so this is a support ability granted item, where it gains, your character gains physical shield equal to 40% of their HP for 2 turns, and it cannot be dispelled, and it can only be used 1 time per battle. That is a heavy thing. If you know, you know, and I'm sure most everyone knows, damage is big in this game. You take tons of damage. Even your characters that you build up to not take much damage and to tank, which this is what you ideally would put that on, they still take tons of damage. And so for you to only get 40% of your HP from this only 1 time per battle at base level is really tough, in my opinion. That is not good enough. You get hit for 40% of your HP, especially in in-game, all the time. Now, if you're just clearing tons of mobs and you're doing low-level stuff and you out-level whatever it is you're doing, this, I guess, is phenomenal. But then, like, why wouldn't you just want to do more damage, even with your tanks, if that's what you're doing? I don't know. This trinket needs love, in my opinion. It does get better at 2 stars. Your physical shield is now equal to 50% of your HP. And then at 3 stars, it is now still equal to 50% of your HP, but it can now be used 2 times per battle with a 5-turn cooldown. And at 4 stars, it is 60% of your HP. And at 5 stars, it is still 60% of your HP, but that cooldown is reduced to 3 turns. This trinket has potential. It definitely serves a purpose for characters like, you know, Tidon and so on, but it honestly is a miss. It's a big miss, in my opinion. It can do a job, and it can do decent. I'm not going to discredit it, but it definitely should do more. And in my opinion, it needs to be buffed. I think that this is a trinket that needs love and attention. It does not get utilized, and moreover, it's hard to get. You don't get a ton of these. And in my playthrough, like I said, I've been playing since launch of the game. I don't have enough to make a 5-star version of this still, and I have no reason to pursue these heavily. And you could even argue that it's outright replaced by another trinket we'll talk about later. But yeah, this thing needs love. It needs more utility, and I honestly hope the devs will revisit this trinket and give it new life and purpose by reworking it. Please do so, devs. Give some of these other trinkets and items new purpose. With that said, I would rank this as a tier 4 trinket. Up next is the Maverick's Cloak. And so here it is at 1 star. When there are no allies within 4 tiles around the character, your attack and defense is increased by 4%, and your crit is increased by 10%. This is a phenomenal trinket. You will find that there's, you know, especially early game, you run around, let's say you're lucky enough to have Cole. Put this on Cole, let him run across the map, and just slap, destroy, kill everything. Everything. And it's going to feel really good. Mid-game, he more or less does, she more or less does the same and just keeps on rolling. And this allows her to do that to great effect. Now, later in the end game, this trinket changes. It kind of falls off. There are certain scenarios and situations where it still can serve a purpose and do great things, but it is niche. It is not all the time. Because in game, you typically, not always, typically want to keep your characters together because the enemies are now hitting like trucks. They one-shot, they destroy, you name it. And so your damage dealers often aren't the most hardy or versatile units, in that they can take tons of damage, and so you don't want them getting hit. You don't want them off on their own, and you certainly don't want them to be out of reach of heals. And so that's what this requires to be activated. It's still a phenomenal item, but it definitely becomes more niche and in-game. Now, its accessibility, it's not too bad. Despite it being a legendary item, you'll probably come across quite a few of these, in my opinion. And I know on my account, I have had plethoras of them, and I've seen where other people have as well. This isn't a legendary you're going to wait for a year to find, and then finally say, "Oh, I got one." This is one you're going to get fairly easily, and you should have multiples of them by the time you hit level 60. And so, for that reason, I would rank this a tier 0.5 trinket. Up next is an epic trinket, Mist Necklace. Before being actively attacked, it inflicts one random level 1 debuff on the attacker for 2 turns, with a cooldown of 5 turns. Man, when I first saw this trinket, I was like, ooh, the potential. There's things there. And, I mean, there is potential and there are things there. But what in the world? The game, and the first time I saw it was when the launch of the game. The game has changed. We are now a year into the game's launch, the game being playable globally, and this trinket, what are we doing? This thing doesn't do anything anymore. You get this trinket and you don't, nobody glances at it, nobody considers using it. It's utterly useless at this point. Sadly, you have characters that in turn 1 can literally inflict 5 or more debuffs. What are we doing? A level 1 debuff every 5 turns for being hit? What? This trinket is a perfect example of something that desperately needs to be reworked and changed. It is hard capped, and I don't even understand why. You already are required to get hit, so I'd even argue at the original conception of the game, this trinket was bad. And honestly, I think if you look at my last tier list video on trinkets, I said the same thing. This trinket needs a rework desperately. It does get better in star levels, so let's talk about that. At 2 stars, you're now, it's every 4 turns you can do it, yay. 3 stars, it's every 3 turns. At 4 stars, now it's 2 random level 1 attribute debuffs, and then level 1 debuffs, and it's at every 2 turns still. And then, yeah, that lasts for 2 turns, sorry, still. And then at 5 stars, it's now every 2 turns. Man, what a miss. I can tell you how to fix this one right here, and it would be unbelievable. It would honestly be amazing if they would just simply take the cooldown away. Take it away. You can even leave it level 1 attribute debuffs or level 1 debuffs. That's fine. Make it to where it's no matter what. No matter what. When the character gets hit, this thing debuffs the enemies. Then at least people will look at it and go, do I want to use that? Can I use it? Should I use this? When tanks like Coco are in game maps, especially when it's like wave survival and hordes of enemies coming in, now they'll have a reason to consider this. When when your characters are taking tons and tons and tons of hits and they're debuffing in exchange, uncapped each turn, that's when this trinket finally will become viable and be an option. But that's not where we live. So let's talk about where we live and the reality we're in. This thing is unfortunately not good. I'd even argue call it trash. I don't like to really say that, but it is bad. And so this trinket is a tier 5 on the tier list. Mysterious Deflection Device. At 1 star, it decreases the damage from ranged attacks by 4%. Now, this is a trinket that most people will look over, they won't consider, they don't give a second thought, and yeah, I honestly don't blame them. It's very niche and when it's useful. It does get better with star level, where now you're decreasing their ranged attack damage by 6% at 2 stars. 3 stars, it's 8%. 4 stars, 10%. And then 5 stars, 12%. It's not the most terrible trinket in the game. I think we just covered that one. But I think that this trinket is very, very niche. Is that a bad thing? No, not necessarily. I don't think every trinket should be good in all situations and scenarios. And so this does a good job in that, where all ranged attacks, period dot, uncapped, are nerfed, are reduced by 12% at 5 stars. So I'm overall, I think the effect of this trinket is decent. I think it could use a little bit of a buff. Give it a secondary effect. Give us a little bit of HP out of it. You know, something, you know, to give it a little more utility and use. But it's still not bad. It's still decent. So I think it's actually just below mid. It is not the most accessible trinket, in the world. It's not something you're going to have an abundance of. Maybe you do, but in my experience and those that I've seen their accounts, it's not the most accessible trinket. And so you'll come across one, but they're fairly rare, kind of mid-rare. And so for that reason and others listed, as I mentioned, I would rank this a tier 3 trinket. Mystery Guardian is next. At 1 star, when attacked from the front, you gain 5% bonus to physical defense, and then you of course are immune to defensive attribute debuffs. Wow. So this is a tank's dream. This item right here is, most tanks have a block or an assisted cover, you name it, and when you're utilizing that, or both, when you're utilizing that, of course they face their opponents. When they take a hit and they switch, they block, blah, 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 they're facing their opponents. So you're getting that bonus defense each time. And then of course you're immune to that defensive attribute debuff, which is absolutely huge. You don't want your tanks to get hit with a minus 60% defense and then turn around and try to do their job. It's terrible. And so this fixes that and makes sure that doesn't happen. This is a phenomenal trinket. With that said, at 2 stars, of course it gets better, where that now you're getting 10% bonus to your physical defense. 3 stars, 15% bonus to your physical defense. 4 stars, a 20% bonus to your physical defense. And at 5 stars, it is a whopping 25% bonus to your physical defense. The only downside of this trinket is it's not magical defense. However, when you're swapping places, assisted cover, blocking, 8 times out of 10, I'd even say 9 times out of 10, it's physical damage you're dealing with. And so this trinket is absolutely phenomenal. When you're getting those assisted covers and you're getting all of that, not always, but most of the time it's physical damage you're dealing with, and this makes you more capable of doing so for those tanks, and you're getting a whopping 25% physical defense bonus, and then of course you're immune to no defensive attribute debuffs. What a powerful piece of equipment that really does a great thing for any and all tanks. For my opinion, this is incredibly powerful, and I would rank it tier 0. Up next is the Old Scrolls of Auguste. At 1 star, you get a support ability instant, where it grants 1 random level 2 buff and speed 1 to one other ally for 2 turns. It can be used 3 times per battle with a cooldown of 4 turns. Holy guacamole. You want to talk about out the gate 1 star prolific trinket? Here you got one. This thing right here does something that most characters can't do, that you want on a lot of characters, and that is to grant speed. That is massive. Granting 1 level 2 attribute buff at a range is okay. It's not bad. It's an instant, so it's free. We like that. But the speed is massive. And so this is a fantastic trinket that is honestly very rare. I went quite a while playing before I got one. And yeah, so you're not going to come across a ton of these and see lots and lots of them. You'll come across a handful of them after playing for a while. And so you honestly, if you're unlucky, you might not get one at all unless you aggressively pursue it. So that's tough. It does get better with star level, like all things. And of course, at 2 stars, that cooldown is now reduced to 3 turns instead of 4. At 3 stars, it's now reduced that cooldown to 2 turns. And then at 4 stars, you now can use this up to 4 times per battle. And then at 5 stars, which is really hard to achieve, you now can use this 5 times per battle. But you're still giving that, you still have that 2 turn cooldown, still the same 1 random level 2 buff, and that speed up of 1. This is a phenomenal trinket. Can't say enough about it. It's great at 1 star, so you don't need to invest in it and get a ton. If you're going all the way to 5 star with it, you're just bragging. You're a well. Something's going on. It's fishy. Anyways, yeah. And so, I mean, what battles do you need to cast this 5 times? Like, really? Like, what's happening here? I mean, it can happen, don't get me wrong, but like if you got 5 of these, chances are your account's, you know, stacked and you're destroying content anyway. So this thing is prolific at 1 star, which makes it arguably more accessible, but it's still incredibly rare. I don't know. I can't fault it for that. It's just too good of a trinket. I would rank it tier 0 on the tier list. Origin Hourglass is next. It increases your physical and magical attack by 2% and then grants immunity to move down and speed down. And so that's something I think a lot of people don't consider and think about when they're thinking about this trinket. It not only is it giving you physical and magical attack outright, so that's pretty decent, but you're getting an immunity to move down and speed down. That's massive. That's huge. You're going to see more and more speed down as time goes by, in my opinion, and move down. That's something we're seeing more and more in the game. We're seeing that utilized more often, and so I really think this is big. I think this is a very good, great immunity to gain for free out of a trinket. At 2 stars, now your physical and magic attack is increased to 3%. 3 stars, it's 4%. 4 stars, it's 6%. And 5 stars, you're getting a physical and magical attack increase of 8%. And so Origin Hourglass comes in a very solid way and does a very solid thing. And in boosting your physical and magic attack outright, 8% is a decent amount. And then you're getting that move down and that speed down immunity. Massive stuff right there. This isn't something that is incredibly rare. You're going to come through a decent amount of these. It's not as common as, say, like your Mavericks, Cloaks, or your fancy hats for sure. But it's also not as rare as like your old Scrolls of Auguste and whatnot. I'd say it's about mid on the rarity scale. And so you'll come across a few of these. You'll probably get it 5-star within a few months of playing and so on. So yeah, this is a pretty great trinket, and I would rank it tier 0.5. Up next is Rejection Mask, an epic trinket where magic damage taken decreases by 20% with a 5-turn cooldown. So this is a awesome piece of equipment that you're going to love when you first start the game, because you just need something to fill the slot that's decent. And then mid-game and then going in the late game when you're clearing those weapon trials and you're trying to get all that done and you're grinding, this is going to be pivotal. You're going to use the snot out of this item to get you through those fights and absolutely love it. And then there's the end game. When you get past that point and you're comfortable, you've beaten the weapon trials, and now you're trying to challenge it for leaderboard positions, challenging the extreme content, you name it, this item falls off. It doesn't serve the same purpose at all, and yeah, it's not nearly as good at that point. It gets better with star level. At 2 stars, you have a cooldown of 4 turns. 3 stars, you have a cooldown of 3 turns. And then at 4 stars, your magic damage taken is decreased by 30%. And then at 5 stars, your cooldown is reduced to 2 turns. So in its final form, you're reducing the magic damage taken by 30% every 2 turns. Or it is a 2-turn cooldown. Not a bad item at all. It's an epic. It's easy to 5-star. You're going to love it. It's going to carry you through weapon trials. You're going to love the snot out of it. And then in game, you're going to forget about it. And so for that reason, I'd rank it tier 2 on the tier list. Roaring Flint is next. At 1 star, it is piercing damage. It is an instant. It deals fire piercing damage equal to 10% HP to all enemies within 2 tiles of the target. And it can be used up to 1 time per battle. So this is a incredibly rare trinket. You're not going to see a ton of these. They're hard to come by. And yeah, I went quite a while before I got one. And now I've gotten several of them. But it is really good at 1 star. It does its job. And I cannot complain about that. And so, yeah. Do you always want to AoE hit your opponents for piercing damage? Sometimes, no. It's not the best option for your characters. Maybe you just want pure bonus damage and so on and so forth. And that little bit of piercing damage isn't going to be enough. But it does get better with star level in a few ways. And this is a very unique and interesting trinket overall. So At 2 stars, you're now going to be able to use this 2 times per battle with an 8-turn cooldown. 3 stars, you're now dealing 15% of the enemy's 8 damage through piercing damage, blah, with a 5-turn cooldown. And at 4 stars, now you're dealing 20% of the enemy's damage through piercing damage. It is an instant. Can't argue that. Like, it's very, very good. It's an instant with a 4-turn cooldown. And then at 5 stars, which is not easy to achieve, but it's possible. And yeah, it's still 20% HP to those enemies. And it is still 2 times per battle, but with a 3-turn cooldown. Man. So, this trinket is very powerful. It does a great thing in shredding those enemies and dealing outright AoE damage. It is great in that it does the same thing as the Flying Blade Armguard, and it activates skills for some characters like Auguste and so on. It definitely fills that niche and that role, but it also fills another niche, and that is specifically on like Miguel and so on. So on burnable tiles, it will ignite them and create fire, as it says, fire piercing damage. But on Miguel, it just does it outright, and it turns those tiles into fire no matter what. So very, very powerful and good there for that particular character at his rank 13 ability. Very, very good stuff right there. It's powerful, it's piercing damage, it's an instant, it's AoE, it's 20% of all the enemy's HP, and it can be triggered up to 2 times per battle. It is fairly rare, but even at 1 star, it does an amazing job. I love this trinket. I'm not sure. I argue with myself quite a bit, but I'm just going to say it. Overall, I rank this trinket tier 0, but probably on the lower end. It almost goes tier 0.5, but tier 0. Shield of Justice. At 1 star, when having a physical shield, it increases your attack and defense by 6%. And at the start of turn, you gain a physical shield equal to 50% of the character's physical defense and the cooldown of 3 turns. This is what makes the Luxite Greatshield a joke. This is how it should have been executed. Luxite Greatshield should have, we're not talking about Luxite Greatshield, but it should have given you a shield automatically at the start of the turn. That's what this thing does. 3-turn cooldown, sure, that's fine. But then it's also giving you an attack and defense percent boost. I mean, this is phenomenal. This is, whoa. You know what I mean? This is Layla's signature weapon, I believe. Man, when I saw this thing, I was like, whoa, this thing's insane. And honestly, in my opinion, it is absolutely bonkers. And of course, it gets better with star level. At 2 stars, you're now gaining attack and defense of 9% when having a physical shield. At 3 stars, it's now that physical shield you gain automatically is now equal to 80% of your character's physical defense. And then at 4 stars, you're now gaining 12% of your attack and defense. And then at 5 stars, you're now gaining a physical shield for 120% of your character's physical defense. So, what makes this thing so unbelievable? 12% attack and defense. 12% attack. Slap this thing, not on a tank. Slap this thing on your damage dealers. 12% attack for free. You already want your damage dealers to stay healthy, not be in the fray, so to speak, and to hit hard. This covers those bases. It gives them more ability to survive, more hardiness. Checks that box. And then it does it for free. It's an auto. Every 3 turns, you're getting that shield and creating that buff. And then there's other ways to do it, of course, and activate that bonus, but holy guacamole. This is a trinket that I argue with myself, and I try to find ways not to use. It is so good. It is unbelievable. I think that this is the best trinket in the game, bar none. It is busted. And it does an amazing job on so many different characters, so many different ways. Sure, slap it on a tank if you really want to. Have fun. Do your thing. Get those shields automatically. There's nothing wrong with that. This is a phenomenal trinket. Absolutely phenomenal. And it's a signature weapon. It's not the most rare thing in the world. It's a little difficult to get, can be a little grindy. Maybe you have to target it and work for it. But this is probably what you're going to target and work for when you are going for those trinkets and you are exchanging your passes and your so on and so forth. So this is a phenomenal trinket, and I rank it tier 0. If I could, I'd rank it higher than that. It's the best trinket in the game, in my opinion, bar none. Shroud of Void. Support instant. Reduces magical damage taken by 50% for 2 turns, which can be activated 1 time. And it can be used up to 1 time per battle. This trinket right here, man, it's an instant. It's nice. 1 time per battle, you're reducing damage. So you're using this when you know you're going to get hit, but by magical damage specifically, and only once. Huh. I don't know. It needs to be better, in my opinion. It does get better with star level, though. At 2 star, you're now getting 60% reduction in that damage taken. Magical damage, mind you. At 3 star, it can now be used 2 times per battle. And then, I'm sorry, it now can be activated 2 times. Which means you use it, and it will do that, have that effect twice. But it can only be used 1 time per battle. 4 stars, it's now 70% damage reduced. Magical damage, mind you. And then at 5 stars, you now can be activated 3 times when it's used, but still can only be used 1 time per battle. Man, this one right here needs a buff. I just read to you the Shield of Justice and told you how it gives you this shield automatically every 3 turns, and it boosts your attack and defense. This thing gives you an instant ability that reduces damage taken, and outside of that, it doesn't do anything. And it's only once per battle. Do you see the difference here? Like, we need to buff this item. It needs an increase. Not only that, it's insanely rare. You're not going to come across tons of these. You might not get one of these in a year's time of playing. Honestly, I have 2. Like, this is rare. This is rare. And it does nothing. Its use is so niche. I never look at this, and I certainly never want to invest the materials in leveling it up. It's just not worth it. Period. Dot. And they haven't given us content to make it worth it. This item desperately needs a buff. It needs to be reworked. It needs to be changed so that it has utility in the game and it's not just a wasted asset sitting there collecting dust. And for that reason, I rank it tier 5. The Space-Time Ring. Support instant, teleports behind any ally within 3 tiles of the character and increases attack by 2% for 1 turn. It can be used up to 1 time per battle. It has a pre-cooldown of 2 turns. Pre-cooldown. So that means when you go into battle, you can't use this turn 1. It will not allow you to. You have to wait 2 turns before you're even able to use it. But it allows you to reposition, and you can get a small attack boost, and it's an instant at that. It's pretty decent. It's interesting. It's unique. This is the kind of stuff I like to see out of a trinket. I like to see unique abilities that changes the way that you play and creates new tactical advantages. So I'm very appreciative of this item. At 2 stars, you're now getting a 4% attack boost for utilizing that teleport. 3 stars, it's now a 6% boost to that attack, and it can be used 2 times per battle with a 5-turn cooldown. At 4 stars, you're now getting an 8% attack boost with a 4-turn cooldown on that second use. And then 5 stars, it's giving a 10% attack boost with a 3-turn cooldown. That pre-cooldown never changes, stays 2 turns, so you'll forever be locked out of it for the first 2 turns of the battle. And that's kind of a hard GIMP cap. That's tough. But I guess I understand. I don't know. And let me say this too. It's rare. This ring is not common. You're not going to come across a ton of these. Or maybe you're really, really fortunate and you do, but you're just that then. You're really, really fortunate. Or are you? Because when you're challenging in-game, when you're doing leaderboard challenges, you know, you're fighting the bosses and it's literally counting the time and judging you on every action, every round, and you're trying to minimize, this has no purpose. No use. It's not useful. You're not going to slot this because you want to kill and clear content in as few rounds as possible, and you're hard locked out of this for 2 rounds. That's tough. That's absolutely tough. In regular battles and other content, maybe mid-level and so on and so forth, if you're fortunate enough to get one, you're certainly probably not going to have 5 of them. It's okay. it does something different. It's okay. I don't know. It's one of those, or it does a job and you appreciate it, but it probably can do more. And it needs to do more. And it's also really rare. So I would rank it tier 3 on the tier list. Up next is Spring Pill. And so this is a healing instant where the character recovers 20% HP and dispels 1 debuff. It can be used 2 times per battle with an 8-turn cooldown. Initially, I wasn't very fond of this item. I didn't think it was the best, and I still, I still don't think it's the best. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. 20% HP can be a get out of jail free card, and it can really help you out. It is an instant. It does remove a debuff. It's not bad. It's not bad. It certainly can fill a slot when you're not sure what trinkets to use. Maybe your resources are limited. You don't have tons of trinkets, and you got this. It's decent. At 2 stars, it does get better where it removes 2 debuffs. And then at 3 stars, it now has a 5-turn cooldown. At 4 stars, it's healing 30% of your character's HP with a 4-turn cooldown. And then at 5 stars, it is now has a 3-turn cooldown. Or everything else is the same at that 30% HP gain, 2 debuffs dispelled, you name it. It is an instant, and like I said, it does the job. You put it on a character, maybe you're not sure what to run. Maybe they get into some stuff, and you don't want them necessarily get too messed up. Who knows? This is a gap fill, in my opinion. But a strong one, you could argue. Because it is a heal, it is an instant, and it does remove those debuffs. That's the key. Removing those debuffs, too. That's massive. And so, I feel like it's just above average. I'd give it that. In that it's able to heal. There's certain utilities, certain ways where it can be a little bit niche, where it's useful. It's tough. I rank it tier 1 on the tier list. Spring Tonic is next. The lesser cousin of the Spring Pill. And so this is a healing instant that recovers 30% HP and can be used 1 time per battle. And so this is an epic item. You're going to come across tons of these. This is going to get you through early game, and you're probably going to love it. You're going to stick it on your characters, and you're going to be able to heal anytime you get in trouble, and it's going to be great. Easy to 5-star. Like I said, tons of these. Then you're going to get to the mid game, the late game, and you're going to see less and less use out of this, especially as you get some of these better and better trinkets for these more niche or specialized, is how I should say that, more specialized situations and or characters. This is a gap fill. So this is a trinket that you're putting on characters because you don't know what else to put on them, or maybe just in case you want to give them more survivability because it's not, you don't have a better option. It's a gap fill. It does get better star level like all things. At 33% HP is recovered at 2 stars. 3 stars is 36. 4 stars it's 40, and 5 stars it is 45%. It is still an instant, but it can only be used 1 time per battle. That is a hard cap. That is a gimp. 1 time per battle is tough. Yeah, great early game, mid game trinket. That is a gap fill. Mid game and late game, it's not something you're going to really look at and consider very often. For that reason, I rank it tier 2 on the tier list. Thorny Ring. When injured, it increases your attack by 6%. Okay. Interesting. When you are injured, you lose. You get a damage debuff. You're not doing as much damage. On most characters. Not all. Most characters. Now, to increase your attack when injured specifically, that it requires you to go get hurt. And then most characters lose an edge in their damage, but this gives you an edge, so maybe it counterbalances that. I don't know. The characters that don't lose an edge, the 6% boost can be decent, but it requires you to get roughed up. I don't know about that either. Now, 2 stars, that attack is increased to 7%. 3 stars increased to 8%. 4 stars, 10%. 5 stars, 12%. This is a trinket that I look at and is a missed opportunity, in my opinion. It needs to do more. It just needs more. Increasing attacks, not bad, but like, give us lifesteal. Like, put a lifesteal on this thing. You know, when you're injured, not only does it increase your attack, it gives you a lifesteal. Suddenly, this trinket's something you're going to want to put on. You put it on units that go out and get messed up. They're getting a little bit of attack for getting injured and or hurt. Of course, dying state still counts. And then now you got a lifesteal, a way for them to have a little bit of sustain, survivability. It changes the conversation. Is life still the best thing in the world? No. But it just gives it more utility. This trinket, but that's another reality. This trinket doesn't have that. And with what it does have, it's very lackluster. It's incredibly accessible. But yeah, just that. I rank it tier 5 on the tier list. Up next is True Lens. At 1 star, it increases your physical attack by 1%, and when attacking from Highland, your crit is increased by 12%. 2 stars, it increases your physical attack by 2%, and when attacking from a Highland, your crit is increased by 14%. Before I go any further on that, sorry. This trinket, it gives you an outright physical attack, physical attack boost. Nothing wrong with that. We love it. There was a time when it was one of the only things that did that, and so it definitely had some utility there. But that Highland attack, when you're getting that crit boost, that's so niche. And honestly, it's map dependent. You know, there's a couple ways you can secure that and make that happen, but it's not easy. And so if you're on a map where it's flat, or maybe even you're coming from downhill position, this thing, its utility changes dramatically. It's a miss. It probably needs a little bit of a buff. Definitely needs a buff. It needs to be changed. But yeah, it's a miss. And they're kind of rare. You're not gonna have an overabundance of these things. So it gets better. 3 stars, your physical attack's increased 3%, and then that crit 18%. 4 stars, physical attack 4%, and then 5 stars, your physical attack's increased to 5%, and that crit 20%. Decently rare trinket. 5% physical attack's not the worst thing in the world, but that Highland bonus is pretty niche and map dependent, and some of that's out of your control, and that's not fun or fair. This trinket kind of falls to the wayside and has not the best use. So I rank it tier 4 on the tier list. Unique Coat. Physical damage taken decreases by 20% with a cooldown of 5 turns. This is the counterpart to the Rejection Mask. It is the physical damage counterpart. Does all the same in all the same ways. And I feel the same way about it. It is great. Early game, mid game, weapon trials, you name it. It's going to serve a purpose. It's going to do a great thing. It's going to be amazing. It can be a gap fill. You do get hit with more physical attacks than magical attacks in the game, arguably. And yeah, can be great. At 2 stars, that cooldown is reduced to 4. 3 stars, that cooldown is reduced to 3. 4 stars, you're now getting 30% decrease in physical damage. And then at 5 stars, you have that cooldown reduced to 2. But you still get that same physical damage of 30%. It is an epic item, and it is easy to 5-star. And like I said, you're going to absolutely love this thing early game, mid game, late game. It's going to be put in the closet. You're going to forget about it, and you're going to say, whatever happened to the unique code? So I rank this a tier 2 trinket. The Wild Spice Vial. This is Valin's signature trinket. It is brand new, the newest addition in the game. Increases your magic attack and HP by 4%. When casting a class skill on an ally, if it grants a shield, the shield value is increased by 6%. If the target is dying, it increases to 8%. This is a pretty great trinket in that it's giving you magic attack and HP for free, outright. It's pretty unique in that way. And then you're getting a bonus to shields. And so obviously it benefits Fallen out the ear. It is her signature trinket, but it also benefits other characters like, Simona. Simona gets quite a bit out of this, I'd imagine. So it's definitely a decent trinket. It does some pretty good things. It, of course, gets better with star level. At 2 stars, it increases your magic attack and HP by a whopping 2% to make it 6%. At 3 stars, you're now increasing that shield value by 9%, and if they're in a dying state, 12% respectively. 4 stars, you're now increasing the shield value by 12%, and if they're in a dying state, 16%. And then 5 stars, you're now increasing your magic attack and HP by 8%, and then the shield value by 15%. And then if they're dying, it increases that shield value by 20%, and you're getting a bonus effect now of it converts 1 debuff into a level 2 buff for 2 turns. So this thing goes pretty daggum hard at 5 stars and really changes, and it gets bonus effects. It's really nice. You're not seeing that on too many trinkets. It is a signature trinket. It can be targeted, can be pursued, can be received in that way. Of course, you can pay and just get them outright in the pools. But yeah, does a decent thing and is a decent trinket. It is a little bit niche. Doesn't really serve everybody, but magic attack and HP is pretty great stats to have, and it's pretty unique for that reason. I would say that this trinket is pretty good. I would rank it tier 1 on the tier list. And there you have it. That is all the epic and or legendary trinkets. Anything below epic, honestly, is not worth putting on the tier list, in my opinion. You could argue there's some exceptions to that, but overall, past early game, you're not going to utilize those trinkets. They're not going to serve a purpose. And so, for me, these are the trinkets I'm going to focus on and put on this tier list. Make sure you take the time to read over each one for yourself and decide how you want to use these trinkets. This is all my opinion. If you agree, if you disagree, throw it in the comments. I want to hear it. I want to talk about it. Let's debate it. Just please be respectful, is all I ask. With that said, thank you so much for watching. Huge shout out to my Patreon members. You guys and gals are the ones that enable me to make the content, enable me to make the pools, and to get the resources to make the guides, to create all of this for our community. Make sure you go check out our Patreon page down below in the description, where all of these items are listed for you to read in full detail, so you can check it out and review and analyze what they do at the different star levels. No opinion added there, just what they do, period. I know our online resources for Sword of Convallaria are starting to whittle away. We're starting to see less and less databases and pools of information updated, and so I'm going to add this on there. It's going to be on my Patreon. You can just go to that page. It's free. Just go look at it, and you can see all that information. And while you're there, if you feel like supporting our channel, make sure you do so, because what you utilize and do to support, we will utilize, or I will utilize, to make sure the content rolls, and the most up-to-date and accurate information makes it to you, and allows me to pursue those characters and those items and so on and so forth. Wild Spice Vial is a great example. I'm debating it, but as of right now, I don't have it, and I don't really have the resources to pull on it, as well as all the other characters coming up. And I hate that. I want to get that item. I want to test it. I want to run it. I want to use it. I want to tell you how it's best to use it. So, yeah, I digress. There's also a link for our Discord down below, where you can join our community, where we talk all things Sword of Convallaria. Would absolutely love to have you in there with us. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. I hope that this has been beneficial for you, and it serves you in some kind of a positive way. With that said, take care, and I wish you the best in all of your adventures, in life and in Sword of Convallaria. Till next time, I will catch you later. Bye!